Hello, everybody, and welcome to the I Am 1-2 podcast with your host, Christopher Cohn. With me, excuse me, what's that? Oh, something on my face? I got spittle on me? What is it? Oh, higher. Oh, you my nose. Oh, damn it. I was hoping you weren't going to notice I was drinking again, Dan. Damn it. I tried. I really tried to stay sober, but... Hello, everybody. Welcome to the I Am 1-2 podcast. And with your host, Christopher Cohn, with me as always is my good friend, Dan the Man, on the other side of the studio.
How's it going, everybody? Hope everybody's well.
We are here today to talk about having fun in your recovery, which I don't see enough people doing in life in general. And we're going to hopefully give you some tidbits and some experience, strength, and hope, and talk about why this is so hard for us addicts and alcoholics to have fun. You know, it doesn't make much sense, right? We're noisy good fellows. That's what the big book says. Be a noisy good fellow. And yet when we're sober, where does that go, man? It's just like, don't mess with me. I'm hungover. I don't feel it. Blah, blah, blah. So we're going to hopefully help you with that today. If this is first time finding our podcast, I am a licensed clinical alcohol and drug counselor here in the state of Kentucky with over 23 years of professional experience. I'm over 40 years sober. I grew up in an alcoholic family. This disease has been around me my entire life. However, in this podcast, I'm here more as a person in recovery, not as a professional mode. And although I will bring all my skills and training and experience to that, but we want to do a podcast on how's your life going and how we can help you get there. So it's kind of an all things recovery. And as we say, the definition of recovery, to reclaim that which has been lost, is usually that happy, joyous, and free kid inside of you that wants to have fun and enjoy their life today, but it's overwhelmed. It's kind of buried underneath all the shit life is doing to us, all right? So we're going to help you reclaim that and get a little bit of that out today. Did I give you a chance to say hello, Dan? I can't remember.
Yes, you did.
Okay. I'm so juiced up. I love to have fun, and that's always been a part of my spirit. There was a period of time when I was trying to convince one of my spiritual teachers that I was dark. You don't understand. I go through shit. I got a lot of demons. And she said, that's what the world's done to you. That's not who you are. And I was like, let me ponder on that. Because I do believe, like Jung says, we do have a shadow self and we do have a dark side and light side, and both have value, extreme value. The dark side, I'm able to help a lot of people with my dark side because I wouldn't be able to they wouldn't know that I relate to them if I didn't have a dark side of where they're at. But, this part of us that wants to just be out there and having fun, because this is our one and only day of life. Today, as we're filming this, it's February 20th, 2025 at boom, 5:16 and seconds in the afternoon. That's Eastern time. And I am never going to get this moment of my life back again. And I try to always remember that at times. That my life's ticking by right now. It's going by as we speak. And we're all going to be there at deathbed before it's over. And we're going to be sitting there going, I wish I could have, would have, should have. And there's a lot of things I wanted to do. But we're not. We're so caught up in routine, right? We have our habits, and I've got my duties, my obligations. And we forget we're supposed to be having fun in this thing called life. And there's a very interesting hint on this in the big book that I doubt very many people have read. Because Dan and I joke all the time that the chapters after the 12-step, many people just don't read. And they're some of the juiciest chapters in the book. And one of the chapters is called To the Employer. And in the chapter To the Employer is this prophetic quote about us. It says, you may have to encourage your new man to play every once in a while. To play. Wait a minute, I'm a man. I don't play. Kids play. Yeah, to play. Like that's part of our spiritual program. That's part of not getting drunk. You know what I've seen as a counselor? If Johnny ain't having no fun, Johnny's going to take an axe to his family just like Jack Nicholson did in The Shining. I tell my patients about that all the time and how Stephen King was writing about his alcoholism. And when his wife finally finds what he's been furiously typing day after day, week after week, it's the same page saying the same thing. All work and no play makes Jack a very dull boy. And then he picks up an axe. And that is us. If you are not having fun, if you are not getting yours, you're going to get that self-pity little like, well, where's mine and poor me? And then we take a drink to have fun. And it's a really interesting concept that we believe, falsely of course, get this idea in our head that it's the alcohol that's bringing me my fun. I have a lot of patients that are clubbers, and I'm never going to have fun again coming into recovery because I'd not be able to go out and drink. But I heard a great quote from Josh Brolin, the actor who's in sobriety. And I heard, he's got his autobiography out now, and he was talking about how he would have not made it in the business because he had a lot of clout with his father's reputation. But after that was running thin, his drinking and drugging was starting to be the bigger reputation. And then he had to get sober. And if he hadn't gotten sober, he would not have done anything, all the roles he's done now. If you've not seen him in No Country for Old Men, do yourself a favor. It's a fantastic movie. But he was talking to Joe Rogan, and he said that's what happens is the more you drink, the more you get the idea, oh, this is what's making the fun happen. I have to do this for fun. And then he proposed back at Joe. He said, can you imagine if you had to take 6 drinks a night just to go out and do your comedy, but you had to do it because you were convinced, oh, this is what they want. This is what makes me fun. And this is a huge delusion that every addict or alcoholic I've ever had come into my group is operating under. That if they give up drugs and alcohol, they're not going to be fun anymore. And I have to remind them, you had many years of your life, at least 10, maybe 13, 14 seems to be the average age of use for many people starting the first time, where you had fun without alcohol and drugs. You did not need a substance to have snot running out your nose and be on the floor laughing so hard your guts are hurting, right? We all remember that. So Happy, Joys, and Free is available to you. So I try to help that spirit within my newcomers. And if you like, there's a little tool that I have that I don't practice it enough, but I've been thinking a lot about it because obviously when I'm preparing for a podcast, I'm going through my files and going, am I doing this? Because I hate to preach things that I'm not doing, right? But it's this thing that I call a fun quota or a fun, what was the word I use? Allotment. That's not the right word. There was another word I was using. It'll come to me later, but it's like in each day, am I making any space for just pure fun, which is damn hard to do, right? We're all busy. We have full lives. I have a lot of obligations. But even though I'm exhausted, did I have any fun today? Now, fun can be as simple as, if you want to watch a bunch of silly little videos on your phone, do some scrolling. It's not the best fun. We're going to talk about that in a second, but that can be a little bit of enjoyment in your day. Sometimes for myself, even though I'm exhausted and I should probably go to bed, I will actually take 15 minutes to a half an hour and get on a video game and just let my kid out and play for a little bit. Just as a discipline. Why? Because I know myself very well, and being that addict alcoholic, one day turning into 2 days into a week where I'm not having any fun, and again, it's going to affect my attitude, and I'm going to get irritable, restless, discontent, and I'm going to start thinking, oh, I know it's fun. That's the brain we have. I know it's fun. Go back and do some of that stuff. So, but when we're looking for areas of fun and what to do, there are different payoffs. And it was pointed out to me by a speaker I was listening to recently who talked about there's been a monumental shift. This guy was a neuroscientist. And he was talking about there's been a monumental shift in the source of fun and enjoyment for the modern man. And it's happened only in the last 100 years. He said more than 100 years ago, you would get your dopamine, which is your feel-good chemical in your brain. You would get that from accomplishing something. You would come home, you would work hard in the field, you would kick back on your porch, maybe have an iced tea after dinner, and you would look at your work and what you achieved that day, and you would feel great. There would be a sense of enjoyment to your life, fulfillment, satisfaction that's unparalleled today, which is why our happiness meter is so low compared to other nations. Now it's changed, and all of our sources of dopamine are coming from consuming something. We've been turned into consumers. Let me binge watch this TV series. Let me consume this food. Let me consume this drug. Let me consume this sex. And we're getting it from sources of just pleasure rather than doing something to fulfill that happiness meter. Does that make sense? And there is a difference between being engaged in a social setting and doing something with others that you're achieving something, even if it's a game or whatever, versus laying on the couch and just watching. Even playing a video game, and I will defend this to anybody, you're actively engaged in a task. You have to accomplish whatever quest, whatever thing you're doing. Your mind is operating, and you can get a little bit of a different dopamine from just sitting there absorbing pleasure, right? For instance, over Labor Day, Super Bowl day, our good friend Travis had us over, and I had no idea that our other good friend Robert was going to bring his poker chips. And I haven't been able to engage in a game of poker for decades. It's been a long ass time. And we had more fun. Oh, I'll just speak for myself. I had more fun at that Super Bowl party than I've ever had at any Super Bowl party. And he said the same thing to me. And there was something special about our little table, and everybody else is over here watching the game. But our little table, we were cutting up, giving each other shit for, cheating or whatever, and just doing what guys do. And it was just so enjoyable. It hit a spot inside me that hasn't been hit in a while. And you can do this within your own family, right? There's actually a national commercial out right now about turning off your cell phone and turning off the TV and playing a game, a board game with your kids one night a week, and that builds, of course, family unity and better relationships, but it's going to hit that fun meter inside you differently. I don't know how. I'm just telling you what I've seen, reported, and felt. Or not reported, but experienced. So think about that, too, when you're thinking about your sources of fun. Like, what's going to be enjoyable on a deeper level, particularly as it involves other people. I heard another speaker one time think about the things you're going to remember on your deathbed. And what you will find is that the majority of them will be with someone else that you experienced it, not by yourself. That nowadays in our society, we do have an epidemic of loneliness and isolation. But you're going to find that most of your memories and most of the top ones are going to be having experienced something, ski trip or mountain climb or whatever it is with someone else. And again, that's another thing that's hard for us addicts and alcoholics. We tend not to be people sometimes. Sometimes we tend to be the ones that are, I just want to isolate, and nurse my wounds or whatever. But try to fight against that. And if somebody around you says, hey, we're going to do this retreat, which I'll let Dan talk about in terms of fun, because there's nothing better for the newcomers when they get their first source of enjoyment and they're having fun with the guys and you see them laughing around the fire and you're just like, yeah, I'm watching you, newcomer. You're giving me juice by you getting juice. Just being together, there's no other better source of that fun quotient, so to speak. All right, so let's discuss. There's just not enough fun happening in our world right now. People are way too connected with their technology and the news and politics, and they're letting that get in the way of the goal, right? The goal of what? The goal of having fun. Again, I'll use that old quote because it's one of my favorites that Voltaire said, what if God is a comedian playing to an audience that's afraid to laugh? And I will actively try to look when I'm out and about in the public and see if anybody's having fun. It's just me. I'll actually look, see if they're smiling. I'll take that. Sometimes I'm not in the mood to look. That can happen with addicts and alcoholics too, because I'm like, I don't want to see your smile. I'm just here to get my groceries, But you know what'll happen if you start looking for it? There'll be that guy down there who's like trying to juggle his bags of chips that he's trying to buy and waiting for the self-checkout. Or the one that's playing with a little kid in a stroller and making faces at him, Or you can be the one, make a face at the kid, without the parent knowing. And the parent looks at you and you're like this, And we're not doing enough of that. And I'm not doing enough of that. I'll be candid with you. There is another factor getting older that it's harder to act silly as much. But I will tell you, in my early recovery, it was a routine for me to ride my shopping cart to my car. And I was lucky the shopping place I went had a huge hill, and I would park at the bottom of it, and you would gather some pretty good steam. And again, I would always notice how people around would lighten up and start laughing because they saw me having fun, right? Some guy's showing his ass, but then other people laugh. There are going to be those that go, oh, this guy, don't worry about that. But you'll bring a little joy to them because you're having joy. And I just wish there was more of it in our world, and I think we're dying from learning that art of trying to have fun. So let's bring my friend Dan in here and see if he's got any thoughts on this. I know, Dan, when you have your retreats and you get to see the newcomers' eyes open up about the fellowship and about just being a kid out in the wild, how their little boy comes out and they're starting to throw rocks in the lake or fish or whatever you all guys are doing there. Any thoughts on this topic?
I already got a taste of that because new guys, got up and started talking about going to a retreat. And when our group talks about that, it's generally mine. Not always. Some guys go to some other retreats. But I know that David was particularly, his little kid was coming out as he was pondering getting out in the woods with a bunch of guys. So he'll be even better when we get him out there. Yeah, it's great. To see them come alive, and it really does. And I had no idea that I was going to have this honor. Another, from last podcast about miracles, that I was going to get to host this retreat and have 20, 30, even a little bit more than that, guys come out and play for the weekend, because that's really what we're doing. We have meetings, but we're playing all weekend long. And to get back to I was about ready to answer your question at the end there about, I am having a lot of fun, but I could obviously do better. There's room. And so you've said to hope that you will consider that. Well, I am certainly considering it.
What am I doing for my little kid today?
Right.
Or do I feel like I have to accomplish something with my fun, or can I just do something brainless, Even the red nose thing, You want to tell that story about Scott Lee from your podcast?
Sure. Yeah, and then go over and listen to it from him. Scott Lee said he carries clown noses with him everywhere he goes. And one of the times is he uses it if it's in a traffic jam, and he will put on his red nose. And then he also carries these little bubble blowers. And he'll roll down the window, and he'll start blowing bubbles out the car window and getting people smiling and like changing the mood of the traffic jam. And he's having fun. He has fun, giving them away to little kids too. What little kid don't want a clown nose and a bubble blower?
Not none.
Yeah.
They'll fight you for it.
Yeah.
And what he said the most, the way he phrased it, was it goes from a traffic jam to being at a party.
Yeah, he did say a party.
And there's a sense of community. And, you're always going to have the grow-up noses that think it's stupid, whatever. But we're here and we're stuck. So how can we have some fun while we're stuck?
Yep, because this is the way it is at this moment.
Mm-hmm.
Accepting what it is and inject something fun into it. I try to do that with the work. I want a guy to have a good time going through the steps. And invariably, every one of them just says at the end, that they actually enjoy doing it. Inject fun anywhere I can. I try to. I'm usually smiling. I'm usually poking fun and kidding around and trying to keep things light so that, that's one way my little kid has fun.
It is a little bit difficult in our world, though, because the energy, if you've noticed out there, doesn't feel fun. It feels kind of heavy out there.
Yep.
And if you try to break it, it almost seems like people are resistant or they're suspicious of you or something like that. You know what I mean? So, why do you think this is so hard for us, though, Dan? Why, especially for addicts and alcoholics? Now, look, when I was going to school, this is kind of an indication that I was already on my way to have this disease. And I had it, obviously, since birth, but I was on my way in progression. I had a college instructor who had nothing to do with my college career, wrote on one of my evaluations, Christopher can be kind of moody at times. And I was like, the fuck you mean by that, right? I tried to reject it, but it was in my face. I was like, yeah, you're right, man. Depending on what happened the night before, I was either coming in like all excited and wanting to do the work, or I'd sit up in the back away from the entire class and make my little statement of being the anti-hero, the rebel, whatever the fuck, wear my sunglasses into class. Just stupid shit. But again, I'd like my spiritual teacher says, was that you or was that your disease? Because last night you were out partying and now you're hungover this morning. So, but why do you think it's hard for alcoholics or addicts to have fun?
Science kind of answer. I think our brains got changed. I think the dope and the booze and the brain chemistry, it's hard. I think it maybe even almost maybe permanently damages you. I mean, I can still have a good time, but I know there's probably been some tweak in that I will have to manufacture more fun than just having it. I didn't have to try to have fun when I was 10.
Like going on your canoe trips.
Yeah, yeah. You were talking about the fun together, and I just talked about a couple epic days that I had alone, but yeah, the biggest memories are things we did with people. Like I can think of the times that we went fishing as a family, all of us did, and even my then time girlfriend and my cousin and the whole tribe of us go and spend a weekend at a lake up in Wisconsin, and those kinds of things that you did together mean a whole lot more to me. And then now the stuff we do in Spiritual Underground, and there was a guy on a podcast today on that Chris Williamson podcast was talking about these dynamics of how why that happens, like from a evolutionary biology, I think, from that perspective. And I wish I could repeat some of it, but it was neat about how we would, coming from like hunting together, we were dependent on one another when we went hunting, and that kind of made that same kind of feeling that we feel when we're around the campfire, just the dudes. And I always like hearing that kind of stuff that intrigues me when they trace it back. And I like what Jordan Peterson talks about. He calls it rough and tumble play. He says it's an essential thing, especially for boys, but for girls too. And don't, as a father, don't not do that with your daughter, and do it with your son. Get them all involved. But I like that term, rough and tumble play. And I remember doing some of that too, and some of my favorite pictures today are when Mom happened to snap a picture when me and Dad were rolling around on the ground, and I was a little guy.
That's awesome.
I have a ton of pictures of my dad being on the floor with me. He wasn't in the chair. He was down on the floor.
You had one of those parents. That's freaking blessing, man.
Yeah.
The science behind what Dan's talking about our brains, I've likely heard another podcast, but I'll give you the short version. Remember, as we're using alcohol and drugs, we're flooding our brain with oversized loads of dopamine, and the brain can't handle it. It literally can't. We don't think so. We keep adding more, but it can't handle it. So its job is to regulate that and to find that balance, that homeostatic state. And to do that, it's going to turn off all of your receptors for fun, known as your dopamine D2 receptors, right, the center part of your brain. And so when you suddenly get sober, and this isn't going to come back fast, and you're in early recovery and everything's dull and you can't seem to have any fun, you can't seem to lighten up, you can't. Like literally those little circuits are turned off, and we're all around you jumping and trying to have fun and dance and say, come on, join the party. And you're like, It's real brain damage. It is real brain damage. Thank God that will come back. I think learning, if you want to help yourself on that, I would listen to speaker tapes, definitely, because they're funny as hell. And you get a good one that makes you laugh out loud, then that will start turning on that signal that, oh, okay, I can have fun without drugs and alcohol. But, man, we do get conditioned on that belief that, man, I have to get lit before fill in the blank, before I can go dancing, before I can have sex, before I can, go to a concert, for God's sakes. Oh, my God, I have had the most fun at concerts in recovery that I never had when I was using. When I was using, I had that paranoia button in my head, which always said, don't draw attention. If you draw too much attention, they might think you're holding, and then they might check, and then you might get arrested. And, you can get out of control, but not too out of control, because you don't want them to think you're wasted, and then they might kick you out or something like that. But, man, in sobriety, I look around, and it seems like we're having a hell of a lot more fun than the people who are baked or drunk. A lot of them are just standing there with their red Solo cup. They're not singing, they're not dancing, they're not screaming out loud. And, you know what else was helpful for me, Dan? Is we were in a halfway house where it was two They're both called Progress Valley. Progress Valley number 1, number 2, and number 1 was for men and number 2 is for all women. But they would make us go to a meeting every Friday night so that we would mix and talk and socialize, start to reacclimate ourselves to that shit, although they were watching us, no funny business. But then they would have dances every now and then. And I don't know, man. I flourished at that. I don't know if you did any serious dancing in your time. I did go through the disco craze, and that was a great time. People don't realize how much fun we had during disco times. Anybody back there, you know what I'm talking about. It was a lot more fun than the freaking thrasher movement, the heavy metal movement, or the punk movement, or any of that stuff. But maybe not the punk movement. They had a lot of good times too. But I didn't realize in early recovery what a joy that would bring to my life, to go out and just lose your shit on the dance floor and not worry about who the fuck cares or is looking at you, right?
Yep, it is cool.
But you take a newcomer and try and take them to a dance. Are they dancing, Dan?
Nope. Nope.
You take them to the retreat. You tell them, why don't you try this? Are they doing it? No. They're going to let you do it first and make sure they don't want to make a mistake, for God's sakes, right?
Yeah. But I got a couple things that causes guys that I get out of their comfort zone pretty good, and I think that's one of the things that's good for this deal, because it's a safe place to do that.
I am so glad you brought that up, because I did not want to forget to mention that. So Dan has this coyote lure, and I don't want to give away all of his thunder, but he uses it to just sort of throw everybody off balance. And
it's a coyote call. It's a noisemaker.
Yeah, and what happened was it threw the energy on a loop because nobody knew what was going on. And that's where fun can happen, where people are off center and they're not off balance and they're not quite sure, and they're like, what's that? What's going on? And oh my God, it was so much fun to watch the newcomers get caught up and get scared and everything. And
yeah, I did every year, and it's fun. I'm gonna keep on doing it.
Yeah. So, but and try to go with it too. If you're ever in an environment where things are going in a way where it looks like, oh, something's unfolding, something's happening, don't be the guy that's standoffish. No, they're trying to contribute or try to lower your ego enough to participate. And who knows, you might come out saying that was one of the funnest things I ever did in my entire life.
Yep.
You know?
Yep, that is. It's one of the top 2 myths in coming into recovery. It's that I'm not going to have any friends and I'm not going to have any fun in one order or another. And it is truly a myth. Our buddy Scott Lee says there are no rules in AA, and here's one. We absolutely insist upon enjoying life.
Mm-hmm. We are not a glum lot.
We are not a glum lot. Happy, joyous, and free, all over in there.
So if you're a newcomer and you're wondering, where do I get started? I'm going to tell you where the answer is please hang around after the meetings. That meeting in the parking lot with just a few guys is a lot more bawdy and raw and vulgar and fun than anything you're going to hear in a meeting. That's for damn sure. And I don't know if your town has this. It seems to be a dying thing. But up in Minnesota and up through the Midwest, northern Midwest, they have this chain of restaurants called Perkins. And Perkins is open 24 hours, and they have the endless bottomless coffee cup. So literally, you could just buy a coffee mug and just stay there all night. They don't like it, but that's what we would do. And oh my God, even though I knew I needed to go to sleep, I didn't want to leave because I was high. I was enjoying my friends so much. And if you've never experienced that in early recovery, please don't cheat yourself. It's one of those rite of passages that you got to stay up too late, laughing so hard the next day your insides hurt. Then when you wake up, you're like, I should have gone to bed earlier. Oh my God, but I still feel juice. And it's the best. It's the absolute best. Magic happens with people in early recovery at the restaurant after a meeting. Yeah. But, we'll find all kinds of reasons to reject it, though. Right, Dan?
Yep.
I don't have the money. I'm on a diet. I shouldn't be doing that. I need to go home, go to bed. Yep. And you're going to miss it.
I try to make as many of them as I can possibly do. And that's just in general our gatherings.
Mm-hmm. But
I had some real fond memories of it before I met you. Those guys took care of me. Of being in a Dairy Queen till 2 a.m, and first time I met him, we stayed at a McDonald's, and it was, back then stuff stayed open. Stuff don't stay open anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And, you'd be lucky to find someplace stays open past 10. Sitting in a McDonald's, these guys I'm 3 or 4 days sober. And they sit with me after the meeting, 9 o'clock meeting until like 2 o'clock in the morning, and they get up and they pack their stuff and we all leave and I go home. And by then I'm tired enough that I can get to sleep because I couldn't sleep, hard to sleep when you get sober. And did it another night. And then, man, these guys would belly laugh. And it was like being in front of comedians or something. They were having such a good time that people in the restaurants looking over at you. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't comfortable with that yet, like, mm-hmm. Hold it down, fellas. Everybody's looking at us, man. I wasn't about to say that, but that's what I was feeling.
Right.
And night after night after night, and I don't know. I don't know if my timeline's right, but after a couple weeks, we'd go be there, and it'd be like 10 o'clock, 10:30, and guys would start going, well, it's about time to go. Now, they were having the same amount of fun, but they were leaving. And I was thinking for a while, man, these cats are staying out late like every night sober. I mean, like, what are they doing? How do they do this? I can't do this all the time. And but then what they were doing, they was carrying me through some early recovery, man. Mm-hmm. They were keeping me sober. They were in there staying up with me, but then after a while, when I got my feet under me a little bit, they're like tipping the hat and saying, "Hey, it's bedtime, brother," and it was beautiful to me. I also have a super warm feeling. It'll make me want to tear up.
They're carrying
to think
the
about
message,
that.
and the message is not only that we are not a glum lot and we insist on having fun, but this ain't so bad. This ain't so bad, newcomer. Do you see? You can still go out. You can still act crazy as hell and not get arrested. What a concept, right?
Yeah, they were demonstrating that to me, plain and simple.
So that's another aspect I wanted to bring up. If you're a sponsor out there, think about ways that you can bring fun to your home group and or to the newcomers and represent that for them. And I'm going to give you some examples. Before we would go to the restaurant, like we would head down to the Big Boy, and then always take a group picture around the Big Boy if everybody acted a fool around it. And people, again, would think we were drunk. And we're stone cold sober. We've had cops in the parking lot looking at us and eyeballing us, and it's like, nope, sober. And I'll tell you another story about that real quick. But on the way there, we would like drag race and hang out the window and scream at each other, like who's getting ahead of each other and shit like that. And we would actually go by the halfway. There's a major treatment center in our town for the homeless, and the guys are always out there smoking their cigarettes. And after we would take the meeting into the jail, we would always drag race past there and scream out the window, ah! And just like, we're sober, ah! and they would just stand there and be like, every time, man. And we would just laugh and laugh. I mean, if we're talking 5 different cars come speeding by with guys hanging out the window screaming shit that don't make no sense, and they're just sitting there going, what was that? It's called fun. It's called fun. One of my sponsees who took me at my word, he was a beautiful angel at showing newcomers how to have fun. He would go pick up the guys from this place. They have no way to get off property restriction. Well, they're not restriction, but after a while they're allowed to go to meetings. And they have nowhere else. They have nowhere to go, and they've got no car. And that was a godsend for them to have somebody come down and say, here, I'm going to come take you to the meeting, get to hear something different instead of the same old shit you got to listen to every night. But on the way back, he would consciously go by this part of downtown we have in Louisville. It's called 4th Street Live. 4th Street Live is our version of Mardi Gras. And I'm telling you, it's a cheap man's second, but it's pretty close. We have a strong nightlife on Main Street and 4th Street Live in downtown Louisville. And he would consciously stop at the stoplight right on the edge of the entrance to the 4th Street Live, which has all the bars and all the stores and all the people out in the street carrying their drinks. And there was always cops positioned there. And he would consciously turn the music up as loud as he could and yell out, Chinese fire drill. And all the guys would get out of the car and run around the car and scream and hoot and holler and dance, and then get back in the car and then be like that right before the light turned. And inevitably, a cop would come over here with his flashlight. He'd come walking over. He's got his flashlight going, and he leans into the car this deep, and his flashlight's right in my friend's face going, what are you boys doing tonight? And he'd go, oh, we just got done going to our AA meeting. I'm taking the guys back to the own place. And the guy would get pissed. The guy would get, alcoholics, whatever. And I've had that happen when I've worked with the guy in the parking lot, and the St. Matthew's cops show up and say, what are you going to do? And I say, we're on chapter 2. Would you like to read? And they're always like, get out of here, I guess. Again, you're just lightening them up, trying to have some fun. And if you're an old-timer out there, and you want to show them how to have fun, here's a simple suggestion. Take a Frisbee to the meeting. Take a football to the meeting. And when you're out in the parking lot, start throwing it with guys. You'd be amazed how many pile on and get excited. And then you'll see the new guy suddenly warm up where he wasn't feeling a part of before, but he's got a history of being a football player. And suddenly he's out there catching and running and laughing, and he's in. It's that freaking simple. But when was the last time, Dan, you went to a meeting and saw somebody break that out after a meeting? Or a hacky sack?
Yeah.
I mean, you'd be surprised. The littlest thing, everybody's like, oh, let me try it.
They break out Frisbees and footballs at the retreat.
Yeah, absolutely. And another one I used to do is when I had my classic car, I would bring my 1968 convertible Ford Galaxy 500 and just roll that sumbitch up and say, who wants a ride? And boy, it was nothing funner, man. We would take that loop through the park. There's a major park here in Louisville called Cherokee Park that's created by Olmsted, who created Central Park. And we would tell our new guy, okay, when we hit the park, don't say a word. Just go through with us and be quiet and just listen. And it was always right at dusk, and the sky was that color, and the crickets were going, and the cicadas, and we'd come through that loop, and we'd say, how was that? And the guy would be like, whoa, man, that was some heavy shit. Again, like we just smoked a joint with him, and all we did was show him an experience, and that hooks them more than anything else. Oh, that's the meeting where they threw the football. And I got to tell you, when we used to do that at the old men's group, some of the old timers would look at us funny. And I never understood that. I was always like, well, why don't you boys come down here and throw? Why don't you come play? And instead they would stand off and judge and watch for those people when you're doing your little journey of trying to have more fun. It's like their little kid is jealous. Their little kid desperately wants to play, but their ego just won't let them do it, you know? It's very sad. Your dad strikes me as a guy that has a lot of fun in his life. Have you watched him do that?
Sure.
Over his life?
Be fun all of his life. He's always got a smile on his face, and that's one thing I've talked about, how he taught me to work and do all these skills. One thing, and I try to do that when I'm working too. Like me and Charlie, we cut up all day long. We make the day fun. We're gonna have fun today. We're just having to get some work done. And Dad would introduce fun into when he was teaching me stuff too, and make stuff fun. And I think I retained it better as a result of having it as a fun experience. And I can think over the years of Dad cracking up laughing, and we have a laugh every day. Every day we laugh about stuff, joke around, make goofy comments and stuff. But yeah, he taught me well. I don't got this alcoholic gene in me or whatever, but I say over and over again, it wasn't because of my dad.
The other thing is, if you can find a particular favorite team and you have a rivalry with somebody else at the meeting, and every week you want to give each other shit about the standings, being into video games, finding another player in the group. There was one night where Resident Evil, the remake of Resident Evil 2 was coming out, and a couple of guys in the meeting were completely beside themselves because it was going to be a fantastic remaster, and it's one of the best games ever made. And so we were talking about who's going to get it first, because some had pre-ordered it, some were insured, they had an inside track, they were going to get it first. And one of our guys freaking knew an employee or something at GameStop who opened the doors for him after they were closed and did the early sale to him. So next thing I know, I'm getting this picture on my phone with him holding it going, and I'm like, you son of a bitch. And again, it seems like we're talking about goofy, small, stupid little stuff, but aren't you going, I just told you about it, and I haven't thought about that memory in 15, 20 years. Right?
Yep, right.
That's the point. We're living our lives in these little routines where I get up and I brush my teeth and I do this.
What's there saying? He with the most stories dies best. Something like that.
Yes. Well, the bumper sticker says he with the most toys, but it really is. It really is stories. Yeah, and memories.
Dies best.
Memories is the only thing you take with you at the end, as far as I can figure. Right. Your karmic imprint of who you are and what you did in this lifetime. You don't get to take your possessions. So just think about it, and then think about, if you're at home considering this, to wrap it up, think about how you're representing it for your children, because that is literally going to be the way they're going to approach life. Think about how you're representing it for your newcomer. Show your ass every now and then, even by me having this cough, right, and not being perfect. That's good to show them. Even doing the little nose bit I did at the beginning of group. Just have fun and demonstrate that for your new person. All right. Any last thoughts, Dan?
How important it is. It's almost like oxygen, man, for me. If I'm not having fun, I know exactly what I want to be doing. It is part of my medicine routine.
If I'm not having fun, I'm going to go look for fun.
Yeah.
That's a truism for me. All right, we're going to switch to our question and answer period part of the show, where you, the listener, get a chance to send us your questions about any topic at all, and we will try to help you with our experience, strength, and hope, or at least kick it around, have some thoughts. If you have any questions for us, please send them to Iam12, the word recovery, at gmail.com. That's Iam12, the word recovery, at gmail.com, and we will do our best to address it. And it's anonymous. We never tell our sources. So you can just ask anything you want in total secrecy and safety. All right, we got 3 great questions today. Let's get right to it. Hey guys, great podcast. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I have been sober for several years now, and I have seen a lot of death, some by people going back out and others by cancer. My question is, how do you deal with the grief in early recovery? I appreciate any input on this subject from your experiences, and keep up the great work. Well, first of all, you're doing the right thing to reach out for experience, strength, and hope, and keep doing that with your sponsor and with your supports, because inevitably there's going to be the right person who's going through the right experience and is going to be able to relate to exactly what you're going through. It's astonishing how much that works. Now, in my experience, I am actually running into this in my group, that I went through a period where I was calling chronic pain the number one relapse trigger, and it still is. It's just because that when you're in chronic pain, it's just that incessant on your mind. You can't get free of it, and it just drives you crazy. It's kind of like, we had a guy in our town that was very successful, owned a very well-known chain of restaurants across the country, and he had tinnitus, and he took a bullet to the head because it just wore him down. And I understand that with some of the issues I have. But I'm finding grief to show up more and more, that it's a strong relapse trigger. It's an emotional relapse trigger. And I sometimes ponder, is it because we just have no control over it, and it's so arbitrary, and it's just random, and we never can predict it, and it's scary. I mean, death is scary to all of us. It's something we don't like to think about. You keep putting it off and keep putting it off. Now, when you're going through grief, the first thing therapeutically is to own your own process with it. And what I mean by that is to allow yourself to have your own process with it. We have these expectations that even society puts on us. You'll hear people say goofy shit at a funeral, like, oh, you're being so strong, good for you. Or, oh, you're really doing well, you're holding up fine, good deal, And it's like, no. That's not healing. That's pretending nothing's wrong. And a lot of times during the funerals and all that business, you're so busy, it's easy to sort of tuck the emotions away and just do your tasks. But grief is a very private, personal process, and everybody has their own time with it. And no one can tell you when you're done with it. That's up to you. It's a cyclical thing, as I've experienced it, where at times it seems like, okay, I did my tears, I got my pain, and I'm coming out of it. Oh, shit, here we go again. And I thought I was over it, but I'm not. I've listened to a lot of people I admire in the program go through personal grief. Like, one person lost his partner, and it was totally unexpected. It was one of those sudden death things. And he would talk about his process of allowing himself to go in the closet and smell her clothes, and to feel that pain and to let the agony out, just scream and wail and let it out. Obviously something you want to do in a very safe, very personal setting, but something you have to give yourself permission to do. Again, with the tears aspect, that's hard for some of us guys. So I always recommend find a movie, man. There's always some kind of movie where there's a certain scene or something where it gets to us. And then once those turn on, then plug it into your grief and then let that channel out. It really is a lot of unresolved energy. And the frustration is we got nowhere to put it, right? Death is not like hanging out saying, well, let me be mad at that. And let me be mad at that. It's already moved on. And you're just sort of stuck with it. But please allow yourself to feel, allow yourself to talk to others, bring it up at meetings. You know how many times we at our home group, and we have a pretty good home group, bring up, does anybody have a burning desire? And everybody just sits there. Now you're going to think, but I already brought it up 3 weeks ago. I don't want to feel like I'm repeating myself. Nobody cares. If it's a burning desire that's threatening your serenity, your ability to stay sober, bring it up. Just say, hey, I'm still going through my grief. I don't know what to fucking do about it. But if anybody has an experience, talk to me after the meeting. When you ask for help like that, higher power touches people's hearts and somebody will come forward that will be able to be like a guide to, again, because they've directly gone through it. So please do not be afraid to keep asking for help, to keep letting people know what you're going through. And then just have your process, however long it takes. I do know that you got to be careful about one thing, because you added in here about people going back out. And cancer is very insidious, just like our disease is. You got to be careful not to fall into the mindset and or attitude feelings of all that lack of hope and the darkness of that. We just had an episode that should be out a few weeks before this one, addressing that dark place we all can go to. But if you're alcoholic or addict like we are, it's dangerous to live there. And so as you're having your grief, try to have a little bit of a limiter and or discipline on, well, I don't want to throw a total self-pity party and say life sucks and, then that's a good reason to drink. Because, again, a huge relapse trigger. We're having a fellow in our group right now go through a loss of his partner that was just shocking. She got the flu, she went in the hospital, and she died. Like, who expects that? And the poor guy is just barely being held up, but the group's holding him up because he's talking about it. And as long as he does that, he'll be okay. But, take your time alone when you need to heal and feel your feels, but make sure you got your support group connected with what you're going through. And keep talking to them about it. People have this weird idea that we get tired of hearing about it, and I'll let Dan speak next, but I literally don't get tired with my guys. If he's doing the best he can to work on it and he's doing his tools, you can tell me 1,000 times that you're sad or 1,000 times that you're having a hard time. I'm okay. I'm here for you. I'm listening. So what do you think about this, Dan, with the grief bug? Because it's a motherfucker, for lack of a better term.
First off, we have a rule about that burning desire. You have to do a perfect one once, and you only get one chance to ever do it. And don't ever bring that shit back up here again.
You should be fixed after that,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. It's almost like what we tell ourselves.
That is Dan joking for all of you at home. This Dan has a very unique sense of humor, so he's joking.
That I'll get accused of not... the group will go crazy if I come up with some goofy rule like it. Even suggest it. But grief is a tough one, and I'll just throw another angle at it. And we've been talking about Scott Lee a lot, and I have his new book, and it deals with grief and anger. That's what it's about.
What's it
it's
called?
About dealing with it. It is called Anger and Grief Relief.
Oh, there you go.
And he's got real tools in here too, like do this, do this, do this. It's not just like somehow or another you're going to think yourself out of some of this stuff. And by the time this airs, I will have been down to visit him to learn a little bit more about those tools. And I'm excited about that because I do see, and as Scott said too, and I agree with him, that underneath a whole lot of people's stuff is some grief they've been carrying long term, long, and it is embedded in them. And it was his proposal that the steps can't really even get through it to the effect that it can a normal person. And it'll block you from being able to receive this stuff. And until you gets that grief cloud resolved a little bit, you're going to have a tough time making progress in any area.
Well, there's immeasurable loss around being an addict or an alcoholic.
just inherently.
Yeah, so the grieving that I don't think any of us take into account that we need to do for those years lost,
Yep.
and the suffering we went through, and the pain and the disappointment, and and here's another angle too, is that we as a society, we just like to think about youth and young and life and everybody. We don't like to think about death, but it's just part of the deal. It's as much part of the deal as eating food. It's part of life, and in other cultures they celebrate it more than we do. We hide people in a box at a funeral home, but they'll have the corpse in the house and celebrate their life for a week. But hang in there. It's a tough relapse trigger. I'm really glad you're reaching out. If you have any further updates or anything, we'd love to hear from you. But that sounds like a great suggestion. Name of that book again, Dan?
Anger and Grief Relief by Scott J. Lee.
Available on Amazon.
Amazon.
All right, on to our second question now. It says, hey guys, as a professional working in recovery in a treatment center, how do you go about getting to the point where I won't get so angry and irritable and resentful towards the facility about how they operate? In my inventory is a lot of issues with my problem with systems and institutions, one of my favorite phrases we use. And I believe working in the treatment center that we are here to try our best to help everyone. But working in a facility, I see greed for money in many, many forms every day and in every decision they make. It's starting to cause me a lot of loss of sleep and a lot of stress. So any help would be appreciated. I'm just trying to pick your all's brains, which is a great question, man. I just wrote this in the book the other day, is that, just because we're trying to walk a spiritual path doesn't mean the rest of the world is or even wants to. And we do live in a so-called, unquote, evil world, and people have greed and self-interest at, the paramount thing rather than thinking of others. And how do I navigate that and still maintain my dignity in my program? Well, I will tell you what I've done, and that is I know I'm responsible for just what I do. I can't be responsible for what my institution or other people do. So your presence at that facility can be a life changer for somebody in there who needs to see what you have to bring, that your heart is pure and that you're there just to help people. I'll never forget the day that one client took me aside, and I worked at one of the hardest core inpatient facilities that I've ever been around. And these are tough customers. And this guy pulled me aside, and I said, I just want you to know you're the only staff member I've seen in here all day long who with a smile on their face. And, we always think, well, if I'm going to help somebody, I need to be doing something gigantic and huge. No, that was the thing that made him stay, that made him hang in there another day. So your presence and, what does Bill say, your motivations, the fact that you're there for good reasons, will make a huge difference in a situation that may be intolerable. Now, as you're doing that, there is a trick. You got to make sure you don't let those other people dull your fucking shine, which is what Brene Brown says, meaning that you're going to let what they're doing affect you to the point that now you're not doing as well as you could to carry a good message. If you've resigned yourself that I'm here for now, that's not forever, that's another tool I've used, and I'm going to do what good I can within this, you can work within those parameters. It is an imperfect industry, and I do run into a lot of money grab. It's sad, like you're preying on people's misery. I don't get it. I don't know how you live with yourself, but it is out there. There's also a hell of a lot of people, much better people than me, that are soldiers for this fucking deal, and they're saints out there, and they're saving lives on a level that I'm not. I know it because I run into them, and I'm just like, oh, Jesus. Mother Teresa, Jesus, look at you. So don't lose hope. This may just be a stepping stone for you in your career, and you need to get the resume credit and, show that you've been at a place a while for stability. But God will arise you out of that because your intentions are good and you're trying to help others. You will be risen out of that hotbed or that den of antiquity or whatever you want to call it. Um, but the thing you don't want to do in here is let it affect you. Like you said, starting to call me stress. That's kind of a metaphor for us as alcoholics and addicts in general, is that we get outside our hula hoop because we're starting to stress about things that are out of my control. And then we get back to that serenity prayer, right? What do I have the things that I can do something about? What are the things I can't do something about? And if you can't do anything about their approach to wanting to make money and what they're doing, then you have to find a way to operate within your principles within that. Now, if they start to infringe on your principles and they're telling you to be a lying thief, then you might have to consider leaving. But I found for myself that I was able to maintain my integrity, and then higher power lifted me out to a better job where I could be more useful because I had something good to give. But don't let them destroy the good shit that you have to give. And my heart goes out to you. It's tough. It's lonely is what it felt like reading this. You're in the middle of that, and these guys have the wrong motives, and you're just trying to help others. And I know who you are, actually. We have a history, and you're a good dude, and you've got a big heart for the other addict. So any thoughts on that one, Dan?
Well, I certainly don't have any experience with that direct thing at all. Not like as an employee and that kind of thing. I do like to hear that it sounds like he has. It does sound like he has inventoried this stuff, which I will give him a big congratulations. That's one way that that's our main tool for figuring out how come and why and what can I do about it, And I think everything just seems to work out. And if a guy's working the program and he's doing the stuff that he's supposed to be doing, it never works out on my timeline, never. But it will work out, and you said it beautifully. You just kind of got to find some way to not let their bullshit get on you. Envision putting on a protective suit every day you go in there, and don't let their bullshit in on you.
And again, viewing it as a stepping stone in your career. Because again, the places I've worked that were rougher, I needed that to hone certain skills as a counselor. So, and I've used them to this day. So, try to find the value you can for being there for now, but it's not forever, man. Dan's right. You'll be lifted out of that real soon. So I'm really glad you reached out, though, because that's what we do. Pick each other's brains and try to find out, what do you guys think? And if there's one last thing I would add, too, is try to find an ally in any intolerable situation, workplace, whatever. If you find another ally who's like-minded to you and you guys can kind of bond and say, yeah, this sucks, but at least we got each other, and we can look across the assembly line and sort of go, it does make it more tolerable. Yep. You get a little ally going with you there.
And so you can't be the only good guy there.
You're right. It's an impossibility. There's got to be another good counselor there. It's got to be. All right. Appreciate that question. Last one for the day. Love the channel. Thank you to you and Dan. There you go, Dan. A little credit for Dan, the man over there. I was raised in an alcoholic home and all the wondrous things that go along with that. I did not realize until my sponsor pointed out recently that adults raised in alcoholic homes have a hard time when they are accused of things they did not do or they feel they have done something wrong. Why is it so hard to know your truth that you didn't do anything wrong, quote unquote, if you didn't? And why does this cause such turmoil within us? Why is it so hard not to react and just move on from it? And I mean really move on. Appreciate any answers you guys can give. Keep doing what you're doing. Hell yeah, that's awesome. And I have direct experience with this one, so something to bring to the table. In any dysfunctional system, especially alcoholic dysfunctional systems, blame gets thrown around. And the blame is never placed where it's supposed to. The alcoholic is the one that's getting away with murder. And then we got the caretaker, enabler, codependent over here covering up for him. And then you get the children trying to tell the truth and say, well, this is what we see. And they're like, no, you don't. The emperor has clothes on. Don't pay attention. And so with that blame game thing, children get shit. And sometimes it becomes about you didn't clean your room, rather than the fact that dad is passed out in the living room. And it's like, it's how do I want to say this? it affects your character. It affects your self-esteem. And it hurts to the core because you're basically telling that your truth doesn't exist, that what you're seeing and what you're experiencing is not real, that you're wrong, you're false, you're wrong. In fact, I can say for my sister, I don't think she'd mind me saying that she remembers hearing that a lot. Like, I know you're crazy, that's ridiculous, you're wrong the way you saw it or whatever. And denying your own reality, that you have no idea this devastation that does to a child. You're invalidating them. You're saying you're faulty. So what happens in today as an adult is it's another one of those trauma triggers that as these things happen today, here comes a little kid with the little storage unit saying, well, that feels like this, boom. And suddenly you've got all that stuff activated. Like, wait a minute, I'm not even doing anything wrong here. And it's silly how it can get activated, like over something so dumb. Something where usually you would just go, oh, fuck them, they don't know what they're talking about. But you're left with that residual, and I hear what you're saying about why is it so hard not to react and just really move on. I hear what you're saying is that, why can't I let this go? Well, because it's activated all my unhealed stuff. So there is a positive, a little silver lining in here, in that it's inviting me to look at that and maybe do some inventory work and some journaling on why is this still so potent for me, right? There's never any place we get to, guys, with all of our issues where you're just healed and you're done. I'm telling you that as a 40-plus-year-old sober guy. But I try to take the positive and say, okay, well, this is an opportunity. This is an invitation for me to work on this side of my diamond that I need to shine up a little bit, as my old spiritual teacher used to say. And a lot of times it's okay to have the effect, too, that I usually get, like, oh, my God, more work, fuck. I don't want to look at this. But... And again, you don't have to, but the problem with that is that next time it gets triggered, or even with this one, it won't be over. It'll continue to feel ick inside, right? So adults raised in alcoholic homes have a hard time when they're accused of things they did not do or when they feel they've done something wrong. Yeah, it's that sense of guilt and shame. This addiction breeds guilt and shame in children. It's awful. It's awful. And some take their own lives, and certainly most become alcoholics and addicts themselves and then take their own lives. This disease sucks. That's the definition in a nutshell. It definitely sucks. But you're doing the right thing. You're reaching out with questions. You sounds like you're talking to your sponsor. That's absolutely the right thing. If I'm trying to get honest about my hot button with it, I would say it's it's that seeking approval shit, man. I'm telling you. I had a speaker bring that to my attention just this past week. And he was saying it was my old sponsor, actually, when I was listening to his old talk. He was saying the most valuable piece of wisdom Bill Wilson ever wrote was that brochure on emotional sobriety in 1958 or 56, whatever. And Bill said in there, it comes down to the alcoholic need for approval. And he was talking from his own truth. And, how many guys, old-timers, are bringing that up at meetings? Not many. But, if I'm not getting your approval, like I'm doing wrong, or I'm doing something I shouldn't be doing, or you're blaming me for something, wait a minute, I didn't do it. Where's my approval? Fucking fuck with me. It hurts. No matter how secure you are, it still gets in there for some reason. We have that little doubt about ourselves. So ponder on that, but I wonder if it's this need for approval thing. Like for me, it's even the thing of, well, I want them to be okay with me. I want them to know I really didn't do that. Well, sometimes if they're made up their mind you did do it, ain't a damn thing you can do to change their mind. I had somebody in my life do that shit to me, and I was just like, all right. They were so mad at me when they left, and I just told them, I love you. That's all I could think to say to them is, I love you, man. I still love you. I love you. It's hard, but I took the high road. But I shouldn't need to get their approval. I should be okay. Like, well, fuck you then. You don't think I did. Think I did. I'm telling you I didn't. And you're not willing to take my word for it. To hell with you. But yeah, it's just activating all that stuff from childhood, man. Any thoughts on that one, Dan? It's a little bit deeper question.
Yeah,
I like
a lot
it.
Deeper.
I like it a lot.
Once again, I can't imagine what I could add to the answer you gave. I hope to be able to soak all that kind of stuff up over time and have it useful in my toolbox, because it is real helpful for people to see what what's going on and what they might be able to do about it.
I'll tell you, one of the things that's really touched me is I'll watch the comedian Theo Vaughn on his podcast occasionally get into questions about his stuff. And I like the way he processes it right in front of the camera, like he's in group. And he's kind of like going, yeah, and then I kind of do this. And I don't know why, but I was thinking that I do that. And, and it's really fun to watch him do his process because he's so open and he's so honest. And so if that helps at all, use that in your process of figuring yourself out too. Use it with a spirit of curiosity, a spirit of interest, but also support. I'm not picking myself apart. That's one of the things we do too, is when shit happens, we're like, I should be over this. And why does this still bother me? And I hear a little bit of that in here too. I would not do that. I would just say, okay, there's more stuff to work on. Let me journal, inventory, and then call the spots, and they'll help you find some truth. Anything else, Dan?
Yeah.
It's recovery does not have to be pretty. You just have to stay sober. And if you stayed sober through this, good on you. That's all that really matters. All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up for this week. We do this every week. Come back and see us. That means like, subscribe, comment. I'm telling you, we're trying to get those analytics up. We need your help. Anything you can do to help us with that, we surely appreciate it. All right, we're going to close with the Serenity Prayer. If you want to join us, it makes you feel better, and you add some good juju to your day by saying the Serenity Prayer. So, Dan, if you want to join me, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Just for today, keep coming back. It works if you work it, you die if you don't. Woohoo! Keep coming back. We love you, and peace out.